Good morning.
Good morning, Brother Shankara.
How are
Namaste.
you?
I'm good. How are you, Brother Shankara?
I'm all right.
Jai Shri Durga. Today is the first day of Navratri.
Yes, indeed it is. Have I gotten your pledge? I don't remember.
I did send it.
Okay, I'm sure I got it then.
Okay. I think Naveen has yet to send, but he's planning to.
Okay, good. Oh my.
Hari Om, Brother Shankara, Namaste.
Hari Om, Namaste. Good to see you, dear.
How are you?
I'm reasonably well.
Good.
And you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Naveen. Hi, Naveen. Good
Good to
morning.
see you. Good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Haima. Morning, Swam.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Shankara.
Everybody.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Hi. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So, Swami Prabhavananda's talk from Realizing God. The subject is grace. The truly admirable man controls his senses by the power of his will. He moves amongst the sense objects and acts, but without any attachment or aversion. So renounce the fruits of action, keep your heart fixed in God, and act. You may think, how can we concentrate our mind upon the action if we keep our heart fixed in God. To this my master taught us. If you meditate, then you can use 80% of your mind for God. If you meditate, then you can use 80% of your mind for God. If you give 20% to action, it is enough. So that's the end of that particular talk. I'm going to read a little bit. Keep your heart fixed in God and act. You may think, how can we concentrate our mind upon the action if we keep our heart fixed in God? To this my master taught us. If you meditate, then you can use 80% of your mind for God. If you give 20% to action, it is enough. Now that seems to be an impossible ideal. There's no two ways about it. It just seems to be an impossible ideal. That you could actually do all of your worldly duties, all of the actions that are required of you, with 20% of your attention. But Swami Prabhavananda asserted it was absolutely true. And we saw among his followers people who seemed to embody it. They had been meditating for many years, and so their attention always seemed to be, they always seemed to be indrawn. Very little, they didn't talk much. It wasn't that they didn't talk at all, that they didn't have any conversation or so on. But they weren't talkative. And so this is a truth from the experience I've had with these people who were long-time followers of Swami Prabhavananda. But it isn't as if we should feel bad about ourselves if we can't do that right now. We need to understand that this is an ideal, a ladder for us to climb. Some of you have heard the song, "We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder." The fourth verse is, keep on climbing, you will make it. And the fifth verse is, she is waiting to take your hand. So if we make the effort, there will be Sri Ramakrishna said, practice just a little and someone will come forward to help you. And by that he meant the mother. So before we move on to the next talk, which is titled Ritualism, are there any comments or questions?
Yes.
Please.
We've talked about this before in other classes, and I still, after all these years, have the same thoughts about it. That I think that I feel like Sri Ramakrishna, when he was talking about this, was talking about more manual work that required, just having, put it into practice myself at various times with great enthusiasm. I find that doing things like housework, washing dishes, anything that's more physical, that requires a certain amount of attention, but not a lot. You know, yes, it's easy to keep your mind on the divine while you're doing that sort of work. But when you're, you know, a lot of the kinds of work that some of us do, certain tasks really do require a great deal of attention and energy and focus. And so I'm not sure that that really applies to any kind of task or work that somebody might be doing.
Of course it doesn't, dear. You're absolutely right. And this is why the corollary that Mother, particularly Holy Mother, stressed, to pray that your duties become simplified, that your life becomes simpler, that over time you are no longer required to do those things that demand so much of your attention. And the other thought that arises is that when you have that kind of work that you're doing, you can, as Swami Sridharananda says, divinize it by offering it. This work is done as worship. This work is done with the idea that whoever it is being done for, however it is being done, that requires so much of your mental attention and your energy, your life energy, offer that to the divine in that person and just in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other way to, as Swami Sridharananda said, divinize it. And Swami Prabhavananda's phrase was, give it a Godward turn. Whatever you're doing, give it a Godward turn. But you're absolutely right. Some things do demand a lot of mental attention and energy. And that's why Rabia said, slicing potatoes, it's easier to fly while slicing potatoes than
Exactly.
doing something demanding like painting.
Exactly. I just feel like for us in this day and age, for most of us anyway, it might be good to just keep that in mind, that, you know, most of us have more menial work that we have to do every day. That's a great time to practice,
Mm-hmm.
you know, keeping your mind mostly on God. But then, you know, when we have our other work and I know people, you know, our Nina, I'm going to talk about Nina. Some of you know, she comes to the center and she's is it neonatal or?
She works primarily with tiny babies and primarily with heart surgery. And she's an anesthesiologist.
Yes. And you know, she's talked about this, that, you know, of course she needs 110% focus when she's doing that. But she talked about before going in, you know, to work with a particular baby, you know, offering it.
Yes.
And then going in with her full attention.
She would offer all of the actions and the outcome to the divine, because they don't save all those babies.
And that's just, and it really had, from what she said, it really had a wonderful effect. And it is a way to do that if you have work that you must do that require, you know, you can't feel bad about not being able to, because of the kind of work you have.
Right.
So
No, she is a great karma yogi.
yeah.
She really is a great karma yogi.
Okay.
So anything else? Thank you, Cindy. That was very appropriate, very on point.
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, Haima.
I do believe in that meditation does turn your mind towards Godward. More, you can do all the actions, everyday, regular things. I think we can practice that. Like it's all, even bad things happen. Well, that's a divine power. You know, God wanted that to happen to me. That's how I tell myself.
Yes.
That just makes it easier to deal with life. Once we meditate and find ourselves, then we understand the world better. We understand the world around us better.
And we understand chapter 3 of the Gita better.
Yes, yes,
Chapter 3 of the Gita, chapters 3 through 6 of the Gita
yes.
are really the heart of the Gita. And there we find that
Some contentment and peace.
we are, in point of fact, we are not the doers.
Control.
That it is the gunas who are doing this, and we are the observers. We are the Atman. This is being done for the purposes of the Atman. The Atman is both personal and impersonal. It's a very mysterious idea.
This is a powerful statement. What if you meditate, you can use 80% of your mind for God. If you give 20% to action, it's enough. I think it's very, very powerful.
Well, you're right, Haima, absolutely. And as Cindy pointed out, what you find out over time is that takes different forms.
Sure.
It isn't just
Exactly.
keeping the form or formless aspect of God in front of your attention. You keep your work in front of your attention, but you somehow divinize it or give it a Godward turn, like she mentioned, Nina.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear. Anything else from anyone?
Shankara,
Yes, I am.
I agree with everything that has been said over here so far. Just
Mhm.
wanted to add that I too have tried when I was working to offer, before I went in to see, at least whenever I could remember, I would offer to God, my care to the patient and the results. Also, what I was going to add was, no matter how much mental work we are doing, and which requires a lot of attention, at least for me, I have not reached a state where I'm in a flow. My mind does tend to get distracted, even when I'm doing mental work. And what I'm trying to practice is, when my mind gets distracted, rather than go from one thought to another scattered thought, try to bring God at those times.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm getting distracted in my mental work, try to remember God in those moments.
Very good. That is exactly, that grounds you, centers you, focuses your attention in a way that nothing else will. So very good. Perfect. Anything else before we move on? Okay. Thank you for all of those comments, and I think we processed the end of that last talk very well. This is truly what is meant by studying the art of spirituality together. So the next talk, and this is a very interesting talk for Westerners who really, they're not very clear. Most Westerners are not, other than the ceremonies that start a baseball game or a football game, we don't know much about ritualism. So this talk on ritualism was specifically, of course, designed for and written for people who were not familiar with ritualism as part of their culture. Catholics and Episcopalians and Lutherans and some kinds of Methodists, they have more ritual in their spiritual practices on Sunday and other times. But most Protestants, there's virtually no ritual in their spiritual practices. So the title of this talk is Ritualism. The highest truth is to realize our destiny, to realize our identity with Brahman, realize the true being, the true self within. I'm going to read that again because it's, the Swami's statement of purpose for the talk. The highest truth is to realize our identity with Brahman, realize the true being, the true self within. And ritualism is one of the methods. It is not the only method, and it is not that everyone has to practice ritualism, but it is a help, especially for a beginner. Of course, it depends upon one's temperament. There are two extreme schools of thought. One identifies religion with ritualism, and that's all you have to do. When we emphasize ritualism and identify that with our spiritual life, we forget why ritualism is being practiced. We forget that the ideal is to experience God, but some form of spiritual discipline has to be practiced, whether ritualistic worship or worshiping God with prayer and chanting of his name or meditating. When there is a current of thought flowing toward God constantly, or the highest, when there is a current of thought flowing towards God constantly, or the highest, life from where he stands, what in the world? When ritualistic worship or worshiping God with prayer and chanting of his name or meditating, when there is a current of thought flowing toward God constantly, or the highest, meditation on the supreme identity with Brahman. Oh, did that skip again something? Well, I'm just going to have to.
That was how it's in the book.
Okay, very good.
Didn't
Thank you,
skip.
dear.
Mm-hmm.
Toward God constantly, or the highest meditation on the supreme identity with Brahman. My master said, a man should begin his spiritual life from where he stands. Now, this is so very important to us. I want to stop and emphasize this. It's so easy for us to think, oh, I should be saintly. I should be the ideal right away. And if I don't do that, I'm somehow falling short. Absolutely not. We begin our spiritual journey toward the center, that is the highest ideal of our realization of our identity with the Godhead, Brahman. We begin that from where we are, knowing that the fact that we have awakened to the desire to move in that direction is so auspicious all by itself. And that we should celebrate, that we should recognize and say, okay, then what is next for me? Because as Sri Ramakrishna pointed out, to be a hypocrite is to completely miss the boat. To say, I am that which I aspire to be. We can take a stand for what we aspire to be. But we can't say, I am that. That's why he discouraged us from saying, Shivoham, Shivoham. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. No. We are Jiva, though Shiva inhabits Jiva. We are that Jiva beginning our journey. And if we approach it in that spirit, then it becomes an adventure. Then it becomes an adventure discovering who you are and where you are and how to move forward, rather than constantly disappointing yourself by thinking, I am not yet the ideal. No, you are whoever you are right now. Each of us is new, each of us is utterly unique. Utterly unique. All you have to do is look in the mirror and then look at a picture of someone else. You have many of the same features and attributes, but you're very different. You're unique. And that uniqueness of physical form is just an indication of your uniqueness as a spiritual entity. Atman is infinite in its aspects. And Atman has created you for its purposes. This is what Krishna says in the Gita. Atman has created you for its purposes, your purposes, since you are Atman. But we don't yet know that, so we just have to take a stand for it. But nevertheless, we start from where we are. A man or a woman begins their spiritual life from where they stand. If an ordinary man is told to meditate on the union with the absolute Brahman, he cannot grasp the truth of it, nor can he follow the instructions. He may make an attempt, but he will soon tire and give it up. However, if the same man is asked to worship God with flowers, perfume, and other accessories, you will find that his mind gradually becomes concentrated and he will soon experience joy in his worship. Now, is Swami Prabhavananda talking through his hat here? No. He not only experienced this himself, he was not in any way a ritualist when he came to the Ramakrishna order. I mean, not even close. He was intellectual, he was a smart aleck, he was a revolutionary, helping smuggle guns to the revolutionaries when he was in college. All of this. So when he first was told to do the worship, but he learned just exactly as he described it here, of the joy of ritual worship. And then he was, because of that being his personal experience, he was able to teach literally probably 100, if not closer to 200, I don't know just exactly the number, Westerners to do this ritual worship over the years. I'm talking about people who became monastics. Others he taught as well, but the monastics were taught to do it every day. And he saw that it transformed them too. As the mind gradually becomes concentrated, the person will soon experience joy in worship. Through ritualistic worship, devotion to the performance of japam grows. Japam is the repetition of the mantra. Devotion to the performance of japam grows, and you begin to love to chant the name of the Lord. The finer the mind becomes, what does it mean, the finer the mind becomes? You leave behind the coarser thoughts of life, or they arise and you simply let them pass. The mind becomes more it becomes easier and easier to concentrate on the divine and concentrate on what's going on within you and not be distracted by the coarser aspects of material life. The finer the mind becomes, the greater its capacity for higher forms of worship. An aspirant moves toward the ideal by a process of natural growth. And this is why I said earlier on, it's like playing a game of Monopoly. You can't jump 12 squares ahead. You whatever the roll of the dice is, that's what you do. And so your karma is equivalent to the roll of the dice, the actions of the gunas. And so you move ahead, and sometimes it seems like you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Yes, no doubt about it. But it is a natural process rather than a forced one, because as the Swami said earlier, when you force it, you try to do something that you're really not prepared to do. What happens is it just wears you out. You tire of it, and you become discouraged with the whole shebang, the whole process. So no, patience, patience, patience and perseverance. If any religion insists that ritualism is the only way, then that religion will grow into a fanatical sect. And boy, have we seen that over the millennia. We have seen these fanatical sects. And they almost always turn violent. Ritualism is not absolutely necessary. It is not that everybody has to practice it to have religion or to have a spiritual life. It is according to the temperament of the individual that a method is given. Now, notice that the Swami has repeated himself here. And it's very deliberate that the repetition is there. Because it's easy to think now, because the Swami has described the benefits of ritualism, that it's necessary. And so he repeats himself. Ritualism is not absolutely necessary. It is not that everybody has to practice it to have religion or to live a spiritual life. It is according to the temperament of the individual that a method is given. I'll give you my personal experience. One day I was arranging a basket of flowers that was sent by a devotee to my master. He asked, have you given 3? He asked, have you given half of those flowers to the Lord in the shrine? I answered, no. In my mind, I thought, that's only a picture. Here is the living God. He seemed to read my thoughts and said, you think that's only a picture? I said in a low voice, yes. Then he asked me, have you ever done ritualistic worship? I said, no. Why? I don't believe in it. Now, this is the story I was telling you about Swami Prabhavananda earlier, when he was still a bani, not even yet a brahmachari. And so here is Brahmananda, his spiritual teacher, his master, asking him these questions. Have you ever done ritualistic worship? I said, no. Why? I don't believe in it. And he didn't. But notice how sincerely he answers. He doesn't hedge. He doesn't say, well, a little bit, whatever. I don't believe in it. He didn't argue with me. He simply said, I am asking you to do it. Will you? And of course, because he was so devoted to Brahmananda, his answer was, yes, of course. Let me point out that my master didn't ask everybody to do the ritualistic worship. I'll tell you my experience, because ritualism is not something you can understand intellectually. You have to do it yourself to understand its validity. It is a matter of experience. It happened this way. I was living a contemplative life in a monastery. The worshiper in the monastery became sick, so I learned the worship and began to do it, although mechanically. In spite of that, on the third day, the grace of my guru proved to me the efficacy of this ritual worship. It was shown to me, as taught in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever a man gives me in true devotion, food, fruit or water, a leaf, a flower, I will accept that gift as his love, his heart's dedication. Now I confess that I had no devotion when I did the worship. I did it mechanically. Yet the Lord and the grace of my guru proved to me that the Lord does accept what we offer. Often I have said to people, you offer a flower before the picture. You think he doesn't know, but you'd be surprised. You think he doesn't know, but you'd be surprised. The Lord does know, and he does accept. So I'm going to repeat, I'm going to go back and read that. I did the worship mechanically, yet the Lord and the grace of my guru proved to me that the Lord does accept what we offer. Often I have said to people, you offer a flower before the picture. You think he doesn't know, but you'd be surprised. The Lord does know, and he does accept. Most people have the misunderstanding that ritualistic worship is dualistic. The fact is, when you learn to do it, you find it non-dualistic. The ego disappears. The universe disappears. There is Brahman alone. Now, of course, does that happen in a week or a month? No. For those who practice ritualistic worship, it will take a long time before your attention is so focused on what you're doing and on the relationship that is established. Therefore, the relationship being one of unity of your attention, your awareness and consciousness. So it takes a long time, but it does happen. When you learn to do it, you find it non-dualistic. The ego disappears. Now, is this something that happens only in ritualistic worship? No. Musicians understand this very well. When they're performing, either alone or especially when they're performing with others, they speak about it, of getting in the zone, and there's no longer any individual there. It's the group performing together. And it is magical when it happens. And if you're in the audience, you can see it happen. I years ago, this was in the early 1960s, probably 1960 or 61. I lived in Palo Alto, California. And I was very fortunate to see the modern jazz quartet when they were still very new and performing in small, and as far as the big picture goes, relatively insignificant places, like this place outside at the inside in Palo Alto. But they had been playing together for some time. And it was the first time I ever was aware of being in the presence of musicians that truly lost their sense of identity, individual identity, and were simply, as they called it, in the zone, in the groove, as they say in jazz. So this is something that we can experience. Sports people speak about it also. It's non-dualistic in that you simply lose your sense of yourself and anything else but what you're doing. Everything else disappears. You're just that moment and that activity. The ego disappears. The universe disappears. There is Brahman alone. Then the ego comes back, but it is the ego of knowledge. Then you see everything as Brahman. This is the principle we find throughout the ritualistic worship. In order to do ritualistic worship, you have to have some accessories: flowers, water, light, incense, and so forth. These items have two meanings. One meaning is that this whole universe is made up of 5 elements: earth, water, air, ether, fire. Of course, not this earth, but the subtle element of earth, the subtle element of elements of fire, and so on. You see, the earth that we see is a combination of all the elements in a particular proportion. Now, this is the Swami speaking from the Sankhya perspective. He's not talking about chemistry here. He's talking about the 5 elements and their combination by the action of the gunas. You see, the earth that we see is a combination of all the elements in a particular proportion. I need not go into that, but the idea is that these items represent those 5 elements, and you are giving them back to God. You are offering back the universe that has come out of him. You are saying, Lord, take and let me see only you. Take the elements and let me see only you. You are saying, Lord, take, let me see only you. There is another explanation, that all the items before you represent the objects of the whole universe. You touch each item, you worship it as Brahman, as God. We have a saying, worship Mother Ganga with the water of Mother Ganga. Clearly, that's a very ancient idea. We have a saying, worship Mother Ganga, water, worship Mother Ganga with the water of Mother Ganga. It is the same, worshiping Brahman with Brahman. Now I shall explain a little of the ritual worship in detail. Before I go into this, are there any comments or questions about what we've covered so far? We don't want to go ahead with okay, go ahead. Who is going to speak? Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, Brother Shankara. I do have a question,
Yes, please, Swami.
sort of a question / comment. Growing up in India, of course, we are so used to the rituals and pujas all the time. And certainly there's a great deal of joy and energy and reverence that flows around it. But sometimes there's also superstition, and then the fear that comes from the superstition that gets infused into these rituals. And it is so hard for the mind once that sits in to get rid of it. And I feel that kind of taints the whole process because of that superstition and fear. And I'm so glad today's talk is explaining more of the meaning behind the rituals, because superstitions and fears, I mean, well-meaning people, but they bring their own theories and dogmas, and it just kind of, I think, takes away the meaning of the rituals.
Not only that, dear, they have their own ideas and opinions and so on, but there is also fear creeps in because of people who are manipulating it for their own benefit. This is typically called priestcraft. Whether the person is actually a ritualistic priest in the Brahmin sense or not. It may be a grandmother, but she is saying, if you don't do this, and if you don't do it exactly right, and so on, something terrible will happen, not just to you, but to the whole family. Oh, what poison? What poison, as you say. And of course, then there are the priests, the actual priests who do the rituals for money, that say, oh, you can't get the effect yourself. You have to do it through me, because only I know how to do it perfectly and right. And you have to pay me to do it. So all of this is a kind of manipulation of the shadow of the divine to make that shadow fearsome, and to create a particular self-benefiting effect for the person who's doing the manipulation. None of that here, none of that in what the Swami is talking about. It's strictly for your own benefit that you would do the ritual worship, if you do it at all. As the Swami says, even Prabhavananda didn't ask everyone to do it. And some of the Swamis that he trained, Pavitrananda, for example, who was the head of the Vedanta Society of New York for many decades, he wasn't a ritualist at all. Anyone else?
Yes.
Any other thoughts? Yes.
I'd like to share something.
Yes, Robert.
About the zone that you spoke about.
Mm-hmm. As a musician, you know it well.
Yes. And well, I don't know really well, because it is a kind of rare situation.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't happen all the time. It happens frequent, or occasionally. But what it is a kind of, is everyone participating has to surrender It's
Yes.
like forgetting yourself, losing the ego.
Yes.
Last week, right now, with the coronavirus going, musicians don't get a chance to perform a lot. So last week, a bunch of us musicians we were just playing together in a studio where there was no audience, and that zone happened.
Ah.
And it was just a great regret that there was not an audience there to experience it. But when it happens, it's like each musician has forgotten himself, and he's so involved in the music, and he starts to hear the music at a higher level than the normal level of hearing it. And you as a participant, or your goal, I can't call it a goal, but your desire is to add something to this zone.
Yes.
That enhances it and takes it to a higher level.
Yes. And that desire is pure, as you say. It's not ego driven.
Yes.
It's not, there's no, it's not for self-gratification, not for self expansion in the narrow sense. It is, as you said, to somehow add from your infinitude to the infinitude that's being expressed. And it is, I gave the example of the modern jazz quartet when all these fellows were quite young. And they had worked together for some time. And they would, they would achieve this. And it's like you said, no one was trying to do it his way. They were all men. No one was trying to do it his way. They were trying to do it the way that they knew that they could get into that special place. And it was magical. It was beautiful. And I'm sorry that there was no audience to witness it the other day when you experienced it. And yes, it is that state of unity, that non-dual state. Thank you, Robert, for sharing that.
I just would like to add something to what Bob said. That yes, it is agree with them that yes, it is a rare thing, but everybody knows it afterwards.
Yes.
It just is like y'all look at each other like, yeah. But it also happens with solo performers and performances because, and it's a rare thing. But when it happens, then it's like that's happening with the solo performer and the audience becomes this one thing. And I think, of course, that happens with a group, a music group as well, which is why it is sad when there's not an audience, because they become part of that too.
Yes.
At times, which is really, really amazing and magical.
Yeah, there are times when, if you ever watch Willie Nelson play, you can tell he's just gone. There's no Willie Nelson. There's just the music. There's just the music, and it is, and it, like you say, it includes the audience.
I forgot to say what I really wanted to say, which is this music, musician and performance and audience thing it also applies to what we were talking about, which is the ritualistic worship, because you can do it by yourself and then have the sort of transcendent, unified experience, but you can also have it in a group, like during a puja or something. Because I know there have been pujas at the center where some in particular have been, you know, everybody was at a higher level and more unified in this very wonderful way. I know people have remarked about it.
Yes, they have. And I'm very sorry that we can't have people here for the Durga Puja. Very sorry. It'll be beautiful to witness Aditya doing it. And of course, we can participate in that sense. But it's a shame that we can't all be together in the chapel. Anything else, please?
Oh, just an idea while I'm thinking about it in the puja is, since people are going to be viewing from home, is if people would like to have their own flower to offer.
Very good thought.
You know, let's think about that and then tell everybody about it before the puja, just for people who might want to do that, because it's a way to participate.
Yes, as we do at the end of the puja, offer a flower.
Yeah.
And I'll tell Aditya about that. Very fine idea, Cindy. Excellent. Anything else? Okay, now we're going to have a very simple and straightforward description of ritual worship by Swami Prabhavananda. I can't imagine a better narrator for this. You begin by sipping water. As you sip, you say a mantra, Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu, which means you are trying to think of the all-pervading spirit God as consciousness everywhere in the universe. So, as you sip, you say a mantra, Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu, which means you are trying to think of the all-pervading spirit God as consciousness everywhere in the universe. Your body, the worshiper, is also full of consciousness. Then you touch the different parts of your body to signify that you are closing the doors of the senses so that you can see within. You can see within the temple of your own heart, the dweller in this city. There is an allegorical saying that the body is a city of 9 gates, mouth, 2 ears, 2 eyes, and so forth. We go out through the doors of the senses in order to enjoy the world, forgetting God. Whereas within the city of the 9 gates dwells the Lord of the universe. Now you close the doors of the senses with a prayer. Om, as with eyes wide open, a man sees the sky spread before him, so the seers within, with their divine sight open, see Brahman everywhere. May I see him. May the truth of God be revealed to me. So I'm going to repeat that prayer from. Now you close the doors of the senses with a prayer. Om. As with eyes wide open, a man sees the sky spread before him. So the seers with their divine sight opened see Brahman everywhere. May I see him. May the truth of God be revealed to me. In other words, your object in worship is that God may reveal himself to you. As my master once said to me, you have to have confidence in yourself. Others have seen God. I also can see him. Then the worshiper makes some gestures with the hands and fingers. They all have meaning. They're called mudras. These mudras have meaning because the body and mind are interrelated. For instance, if there is love in your heart, it is expressed in your body and hands and fingers. If you are angry, it is expressed also. The idea is that if you can bring those expressions in your body, the idea is that if you can bring those expressions in your body repeatedly, then that same feeling will arise in you. For instance, if you express love outwardly, you can bring changes in the body and in your heart also. In almost every case, a spiritual aspirant who is struggling to realize the truth of God has some obstacles on the path. You are progressing, your mind becomes absorbed in God, then suddenly you find yourself full of lust, anger, greed, things like that. And don't think the Swami is speaking theoretically. If you read the intimate books, like A Light to the West, about Swami Prabhavananda, he freely admits that these things assailed him as well. You're absorbed in God, then suddenly you find yourself full of lust, anger, greed, things like that. As you find in the life of Jesus, get thee behind me, Satan. Satan was tempting him. In the life of Buddha, also we find Mara tempting him. The temptations come on the way. They are the obstacles. And there are three other kinds of obstacles: evil spirits hovering around, psychic obstacles, and obstacles created by gods in heaven. And they will be afraid. Obstacles created by gods in heaven, afraid they will be replaced. They hold a position in this time. And they're afraid that if you ascend to a certain level, that you may replace them. Isn't it amazing that gods in heaven have this obstacle? And there are three other kinds of obstacles: evil spirits hovering around, psychic obstacles, and obstacles created by gods in heaven, afraid they will be replaced. Since you are struggling, they become jealous of you, that you may want their position. There are certain methods by which to remove these obstacles. So if you remember at a certain point in the puja, Aditya does some ritualistic, creating a wall of fire around himself, banishing the evil spirits that is hovering around, and so on. This is part of the ritual worship. Next is worship of the Guru. You meditate upon your Guru because the Guru is the instrument. Of course, there is one Guru, God, Satchidananda, but the instrument is a human being. Naturally, you show your respect to the Guru because Guru is God himself, the same power descending. So this is how over and over Swami Prabhavananda taught us to regard Guru. The human guru is simply the face of first the personal God, Ishvara, or in the case of those of us who follow Sri Ramakrishna, they are the face of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna is then the face, the knowable aspect of the unknowable Brahman or Satchidananda. Naturally, you show your respect to the Guru because Guru is God himself, the same power descending. Then comes the worship of Ganesha, who is the God who gives success. You want success in the worship, so you implore the assistance of Ganesha. Next, you protect yourself in your mind. Next, you protect yourself in your mind with a wall of fire. Following that becomes the meditation upon the identity of the Atman with Brahman, that which resides within, that is inseparable from, but seems separate from the one. You meditate upon the divine energy called the Kundalini, which remains coiled in a coiled form at the bottom of your spine. You meditate upon that energy rising through the center of your spine. This actually happens when one reaches the highest. But now you try to imagine that. This is when I say take a stand for something. This is what I mean. Imagine that. Hold it to be true, even though you're not yet experiencing it. Now you try to imagine that. It rises to the center of your heart, where your individual self is just like a candle flame. The Kundalini rises to the center of your heart, where your individual self is just like a candle flame. You raise that candle flame with the help of the divine energy and come to the center of the brain. This is something that you feel, that you experience with practice. First you imagine it, then you actually feel it. You raise that candle flame with the help of this divine energy and the Kundalini and come to the center of the brain. There is Brahman, and you merge the individual self in that light. The candle flame is merged within the light of Brahman. As you practice this, you also meditate upon that. You also meditate upon the idea that the physical body is merged in the subtle body. Then the subtle body is merged in the causal body. And then the causal body is merged in Prakriti, the mother power. Now, the Swami is giving a summary, and I'm not going to expand on that summary now. So simply to say that what the Swami is talking about is the 5 sheaths of that surround the Atman, and these ways of talking about. The physical body is just exactly that. The subtle body is the mind, the intellect, and then the causal body is the buddhi, the shining sheath that is just outside the center of our being, the Atman. So you merge the physical body and the subtle body. the subtle body and the causal body. The causal body is merged in Prakriti, the mother power, which is that shining being at our center. This way is one way of talking about it. Prakriti, the mother power. Prakriti is then merged in Brahman. And so there remains only Brahman. I am he, I am he, I am he. And you'll hear the worshippers say, Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivoham. You see, that is a complete non-dualistic method. You see, that is a complete non-dualistic method of meditation. Oh my goodness, it's afternoon. So I suppose I'd better stop there. Now the question arises. That's where we'll start next week. You see, that is a complete non-dualistic method of meditation because you merge everything that is dual ultimately in the non-dual. So are there any comments or questions? We have time for that. As long as you want to talk, we're welcome to. I'll just stop reading at this point.
I just have one question, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Haima?
Causal body means it is the conscience. Is that the conscience? Causal
The conscience is the buddhi, dear.
buddhi.
Conscience is the buddhi. Conscience is the one who tells this from that. And we think of the conscience as that which tells right from wrong. That is the discriminative power. That's the buddhi.
Okay, thank you.
That's also known as the causal body.
That is the causal body. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
Yes, earlier we talked about that the gods in heaven, they may become jealous of you, that they think that you may want their position. I thought the gods were beyond the feeling of jealousy and envy.
You would think so, wouldn't you? There is a total spectrum, Nira. Among the gods, as it says in the Chandi, Brahma is addressing the mother, his mother, the divine mother. And he says, you are the great Devi, as also the great Asuri. So there is this spectrum between the utterly malevolent, on the left, I'll say, the utterly malevolent, to the completely benevolent and beneficent. On the left are the asuras, the great asuras who hate righteousness. This is how they're described in the Chandi. And we see them manifest in the world. We see these demonic presences manifest in the world. Those who are greedy, greed is their whole motivation. Greed and lust is their whole motivation. And then we see the spectrum of a mixture of black and the white. So there's gray and lighter gray, lighter gray, lighter gray, and finally lighter shades of tan, and finally to the pure white of the pure devas. So in the realm of dualism, and the gods are still within the realm of dualism, we can experience them and they can experience us. Experience is what identifies the dual. There's the experiencer, the experience, and the experienced. And so there are gods that are very jealous of their positions. Look up the word Papa Purusha. P-A-P-A-P-U-R-U-S-H-A. Papa Purusha. That is an example of a God that is angry and malevolent and malicious.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Robert.
Now, notice you didn't mention the etheric or the astral bodies. You went straight to the causal. Is there any reason for that?
Well, the astral body is a different, that's a different formulation. That's a psychic phenomenon. So the astral body is not one of the sheaths per se. It's an aspect of mind. It's an aspect of mind and intellect. So the astral body is not one of the 5 koshas or sheaths. Those are the Annamaya kosha, the Pranamaya kosha, the Manamaya kosha, the Buddhi, and then the causal, the bright body, Anandamaya kosha. Yes, Anand. Thank you, dear. The Anandamaya kosha. So the astral body, that which you can project, is a phenomenon of mind, and it's discussed in some detail in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra in chapter 3. But it's not part of this formulation of the 5 koshas. Thanks for bringing that up. Anything or anyone else?
Hari Om Shankaraji.
Hari Om Balakrishna. I've been waiting to hear from you.
This Swamiji really explained one thing. I mean, this is very, interesting to me. We talk about self-confidence, self-effort, and all those things, and pray. So this is what exactly is explained. That is the Kundalini power that comes, and that is the grace of the God that gives us that confidence and the self-effort and whatever it is. This tells me we are just only, we are not the doers. It is the grace itself that comes and helps us.
Yes, absolutely. It only seems to us that we're doing it. But as long as it seems to us that we're doing it, we have to do it as well as we can.
Yes.
And so it's a constantly evolving. It's like a rising spiral. It's constantly evolving if we practice. And we will fall back. We will take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. One time Brahmananda was walking through the streets of Kolkata with a disciple, and there was a drunk in the gutter, literally in the gutter. And the disciple that was with him says, "Oh, there's so-and-so. He used to be such a high-flying disciple of yours. And look, there he is in the gutter." And Brahmananda didn't turn a hair. He said, "Oh, he's just backsliding a little." And Krishna addresses this in the Gita. We have our times of difficulty. Girish Ghosh had a terrible time at one point. And it took Brahmananda going to see him to, as you say, the grace to lift him up. So we must never feel bad about ourselves. We must be loving and self-forgiving. At the same time, do our very best each day. Thank you, Bella. That was good. Anything else from anyone?
I see. Brother Shankara, you said we should be self-loving and self-forgiving.
Yes.
Along with that is also that we should not, we should make every attempt not to repeat our mistakes.
Well, of course, we must make every attempt to repeat our mistakes, knowing full well that in most instances we will.
I see.
It is a long road to where we become faultless, to where we become like an expert dancer who cannot take a false step.
So self-forgiving is not really self-condoning either.
Condoning, let's just leave the words like that right out of our language.
Oh, okay.
Condoning is a judgment word.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I condone that. Or don't condone that. No, we simply look at what happened,
mm-hmm.
and we say, all right, that's what happened. And as you say, we can vow, it is my intention, Mother, not to repeat that. Please help me not repeat that. Knowing full well that when we have strong habits, that we're likely to repeat that. And so, like the divine person, we must be ever forgiving. Because if we judge ourselves, if we're harsh with ourselves, all that does is diminish us. Mm-hmm. And as Vivekananda said, expansion is life, contraction is death. Mm-hmm. So we do our best to be expansive. As Swami Swahananda used to say, and this was so powerful when you were in his presence. You might be discussing some mistake that you've made. And he'd say, fine, what's done is done. Learn what you can from it and go forward. And he would make this wonderful gesture with his right arm and go forward. Always looking forward. Always looking forward. Always looking to what is emerging for me. If we wallow in the past, if we think about our mistakes, if we absolutely dramatize our mistakes and think, oh, that was terrible what I did. It was so horrible of me to do those things. All those kinds of thoughts. Utter waste of time. Utter waste of time. Not that we don't all do it. But more and more what you do, somebody mentioned the conscience, Haima mentioned the conscience. After a while, the voice of our conscience, of our buddhi says, no, this is a waste of time. Don't do this. Don't do this. Think a higher thought. Think of who you truly are. Think of what you truly aspire to be. Think loving thoughts about yourself and the universe. Kindness, kindness, kindness to yourself. If you're not kind to yourself, if you are not kind to yourself, you cannot be kind to others. Not really. You can pretend to be kind to others, but that's just it's just a kind of a mirror image of judgment. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. I'm judging that it's the right thing to do. No, true kindness. As St. Francis of Assisi said, true compassion and love can only come from your eyes. when you acknowledge that you are capable of any act. Now I'm going to repeat that. This comes from St. Francis of Assisi. True compassion and love can only come from your eyes when you acknowledge that you are capable of any act. So we don't judge others, and we don't judge ourselves. Anything else?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Robert.
I'd like to share something.
Please do.
I was having a difficulty with the concept of man not being the doer.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a realization as a musician while playing a song on the piano.
Mm-hmm.
I had a thought, if the piano could think, it would say that it is playing the song.
Yes! So right, exactly. Exactly, Robert. That's it. Yes.
Yes.
If the piano could think, and maybe it can, we don't know.
If it could think,
You know,
it would say, I'm playing this song.
And aren't I playing it so beautifully?
Yeah.
And oh, I made a stupid mistake. Oh, all those things, yes, indeed. What a wonderful realization you had, Robert. That's exactly it.
And I thought that might help someone else that's having problems understanding.
Right.
But man not being the doer, that may help. It helped me a hell of a lot.
Oh, good. We are the piano to the gunas. We are the piano to the gunas. Krishna explains it absolutely in chapters 2 and 3. We are the piano to the gunas, and he is playing the gunas. And we have many more keys than the piano. We have all these mental impressions from God knows how many eons of existence. And they can be touched on this way, that way, the other way, by the gunas this way. There's so much tamas, so much sattva, so much rajas, this, that, the other thing. And it's playing like wind chimes. You just think of your mental impressions as this immense field of wind chimes that the gunas come through as the winds, and they touch on the gunas. And we think we're thinking those thoughts. We think we're having those feelings. We think we're doing those actions. I'm so glad you said that, Robert. That is such a revelation. If the piano could think and say something, it would say, oh, I'm playing this song. And it would say something like, oh, I did that arpeggio really beautifully. And oh, I made a stupid mistake. I did a clinker. Thank you. That is so freeing, Robert. That is so freeing. And wouldn't you know, it would be a musician who would find that. But we can all share that. We can all share it. Thank you.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
on a lighter note, for
My goodness, a lighter note. Let's have one.
For non-musicians like me, I think it is the piano that's playing the music, not me. I play those pre-recorded songs and then I just pretend like I'm playing it. The beautiful music.
Well, all of us can sing. All of us can sing. We're all musicians. We may not be trained musicians, but we all can sing. And it is a highly recommended thing. As Vivekananda said, music is the highest form of art. And for those who understand it, the highest form of worship.
And it says in the Holy Bible, it says in the Bible somewhere, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. It doesn't say make a beautiful noise. It says make a joyful noise.
That's exactly it. And if you listen to, speaking of the Bible and the people whose book it is, if you listen to klezmer music, you know, sure, there are really tight klezmer bands, you know, really highly skilled musicians, but there are other klezmer bands that are just some people getting together and playing that klezmer music. It's a special kind of Yiddish music. Klezmer, K-L-E-Z-M-E-R, klezmer. They're making a joyful noise unto the Lord, and it's not tight, but it's lots of fun because of the spirit in which it's played. Thank you, Cindy. That's right. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord. We can all sing.
And one more thing from Jerry Brunner, our Jerry Brunner says, and remember, it's playing music. Playing. Don't forget to play.
Yes. Well, that's it, you know. If we can be children in the presence of our life, we have to act like adults and do adult stuff too. But if we can be childlike, we experience the world so differently. Thank you, everyone. Is there anything else?
I was going to say maybe we can request Robert to play for us sometime through Zoom.
I'm sure Robert would be delighted to play for us sometime. We'll see if we can get him into the chapel when we're doing something else, and play on that nice piano in there. Or maybe he can Zoom something from home.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. Thank you for the suggestion, Swami. This is what I mean about practicing the art of spirituality together. So beautiful. Anything else from anyone?
Just one comment, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Haima.
It seems like when we realize our faults that happened in the last minute or previous time, and that leads us to Brahmagnanam. That's what I tell myself all the time. Every time I have adversities and, I put 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Oh, okay, I've learned my lesson. This is leading me to the Brahmagnanam, road to the Brahmagnanam.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
That is our destiny.
Yes.
I cannot recommend highly enough for you to read the last 4 pages of chapter 4 of Raja Yoga.
Okay. Yes.
Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga.
Yes, I did.
Read those pages. What it talks about is our destiny, and how it happens and why it happens.
Thank you.
And how there is no such thing as being lost. There's no such thing as being sidelined.
Right.
And there's no such thing as being outside.
There's always a lesson to be learned from every little thing.
As one of the poets in Love Poems from God says, there is no one and nothing outside the walls of existence.
Thank you.
Brother Shankara, I told you I was reading the Mahabharata.
Yes.
I'm up to chapter 34. I'm almost finished. And there's so many jewels in that book, just all over the place.
Yes.
I picked it up this morning and it just read one sentence and I couldn't go any further. It was just so much there.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Well, the Gita is contained in the Mahabharata. The Srimad Bhagavatam is contained in the Mahabharata. You know, there's, as you say, there's so much there. So once you've finished, start again at the beginning.
yeah, I already recognize I have to do that because in the beginning, I know that I have missed so much because as I go, it's kind of, the language is, you know, from another country, another time,
yes,
and the understanding of it takes quite a bit of, you know, concentration and effort.
And what we do is we read through one of these great scriptures, we change, we expand, so that when we go back and we start again, I didn't see this the first time. Of course not, because your eyes weren't that wide open yet.
Right.
This is one of the reasons to read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna over and over and over, because as you do, what happens is you find more and more and more that you didn't know was there because your eyes weren't that wide open yet.
Yes. Yes.
Just curious, which version of Mahabharata is Robert reading? Robert?
I'm reading it from my Kindle.
Which author, which translation?
I couldn't tell you. In the Kindle, you know, I'd have to go back to find that.
Okay.
And
That's all right.
If you want to, if you wish to, Robert, only if you wish to, you can find that information, email it to me, and I'll forward it to Swami, just to satisfy her curiosity.
Okay.
If you want to be bothered, it's not necessary.
I'll see if I can find it, but it's in the Kindle edition that you get from Amazon.
Okay. Yeah. No worries.
And it wasn't Amazon doesn't have but one version of it.
There you go. That's how to find it, Swami.
That's right.
So
Thank
if you go to Amazon and look for it, it'll be right there.
Yeah, they may have many print versions, but only one.
Only one Kindle version. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, loved ones, anything else? All right. Well, just because we're talking about ritual, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drown deep in the waves of his bliss, chanting his name continually, tasting his nectar at every step, bathing in his name, that bath for weary souls. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. Go in Mother's loving and protective embrace. Until tomorrow morning, if you choose to join us, tomorrow morning we will talk about the significance of mother worship according to Swami Swahananda. Now, for those of you who don't know, Swami Swahananda was a great devotee of Mother, and his father was a direct disciple of Holy Mother, Swami Swahananda's father. And she told him, when he married, she told him, one of your sons will become a monk. And of course, the family thought it would be the eldest son. No, it wasn't. It was Swami Swahananda. And they lived in a village near Dhaka in what is now Bangladesh. Swami Swahananda. So the significance of mother worship, according to Swami Swahananda, his brahmacharya name was Durga Chaitanya, and he was a formidable pujari. He was known for it throughout the order. He was known as someone who had internalized the worship to such a degree, Durga Chaitanya. So that's what's on the menu for tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Thank you.
So until then, or until we see you the next time, much love, and truly be safe, be healthy, be cheerful. And when you find yourself taking one step backward, as Swami Vivekananda said, we fall 1,000 times, we rise 1,001 times. Just get up, and as Swami Swahananda said, go forward. See you soon.
See you, Brother Shankara. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
This is wonderful.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Robert.